We are recording. Okay, thank you all for being here today. So our first study this week is going to be on how to raise meeting satisfaction among employees. And what they did in this study is they looked at the dialogue orientations of employees and then looked at employee satisfaction with the meeting process. So the questions asked here were which dialogue orientations predict employee satisfaction with the meeting process and meeting outcomes? How does meeting type affect the dialogue orientations that employees use? And then how does an employee's supervisory role impact which dialogue orientations they use? And the methods of this study were these participants were asked to fill out a survey that measured the meeting type, dialogue orientations, and meeting satisfaction. And for meeting type, participants were given a list of meeting types with their definitions, and they were asked to think about a meeting that they had recently at work, and then they just chose which meeting type fit best to out of that list. For the dialogue orientations, the participants filled out a scale indicating their agreement with statements related to their dialogue orientation. And the meeting satisfaction was measured with satisfaction with the process and outcome on a Likert scale. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but I did include these just for reference in case we want to look back at them. These are all of the definitions of dialogues that they have here based on past studies, as well as the different definitions of meeting types that they used. And so a lot of the main ones like negotiation dialogue orientation, persuasive dialogue orientation, those come up kind of the most in the results, but we can refer back to this if we have any questions later on as well. So the results of this study were that the negotiation dialogue orientation and information giving dialogue orientation significantly positively predicted employee satisfaction with the meeting process and the meeting outcome. And then on the contrary, heuristic dialogue orientation negatively predicted satisfaction with the meeting process and outcome. I'm going to go back to this other page just so we can look at the definitions of these. So negotiation and persuasive or information giving. So negotiation dialogue orientation is utilized with the goal to maximize personal benefits and reach settlement. Information seeking dialogue is utilized with the goal to share information with others. And so these two are the types of dialogue orientations that positively predicted employee satisfaction with the meeting process. Heuristic dialogue orientation is utilized with the goal to reach an accommodation between two parties in conflict in order to help them move past the issue, even if only temporarily. And so when this dialogue orientation happened, the employees were less than satisfied with the meeting outcome and process. Meeting type can also significantly affect which dialogue orientations employees use. For example, the persuasive dialogue orientation and the negotiation dialogue orientation, as well as the heuristic dialogue orientation, were highly used within decision-making and problem-solving meetings, but not as much in feed-forward meetings. And then the persuasive dialogue and the heuristic dialogue orientations were also more likely used in innovation meetings over feed-forward meetings. So the meetings and the dialogue orientation somewhat interact with each other, which I don't think is all too surprising, considering that, depending on the purpose of the meeting, we decide to, I think, adapt a certain persona and goals towards the meeting that we try to reach. And then another interesting thing is that all the dialogue orientations, except for the heuristic dialogue orientation, were utilized more by those in supervisory positions than those without supervisory roles. The key takeaway here is, this is not updated. So the key takeaway here is in advising organizations how to improve overall job satisfaction, it's important to look at and see how satisfied employees are with their meetings, and potentially considering these negotiation dialogue orientations and the information giving dialogue orientations, allowing employees to be more hands-on in meetings through negotiation and persuasive and all of those orientations may help increase meeting satisfaction. So I'll open it up for discussion.
This is I haven't heard of the dialogue orientations before, so this is for me, this is pretty interesting to hear about. And in the meeting orientations, actually, this could be quite useful for us if we ever want to use some of these in our just measurements. Yeah, I have some thoughts on this. It's sort of interesting that the heuristic dialogue, which is sort of the mediator's dialogue, it seems like mediation sort of style of like helping others get along better or helping others resolve a conflict, negatively predicted satisfaction. And it seems like, well, yeah, I mean, especially if they weren't supervisors that were using it. I mean, even if they were supervisors, but it looks like supervisors didn't use that. So this was used by people that maybe don't have that sort of training. I mean, that's a sort of specific type of training to be able to help people get out of conflict. If it's not done right, certainly there could be some low satisfaction with that.
Yeah, well, I feel like it could come off as condescending towards both the party.
Right.
Just as like, why are you getting involved? Also, the fact that they, in the dialogue definition, moved past the issue, even if only temporarily. So I wonder how much of this is just trying to get past the conflict quickly so we can move on to the meeting, even though you're accommodating both needs, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking this is the terminology is new, so I think it's going to be very helpful applying this, especially to our peacemaking processes. Because as I'm reading through these definitions, especially the dialogue orientations, it's like sometimes I see, especially when there's a conflict at hand with what in the workplace specifically, we're kind of doing, I mean, it depends on what the needs are that would then direct us towards a specific dialogue. But sometimes I'm looking at inquiry, deliberation, and information seeking. Mm-hmm. And I almost see with a lot of our work, we kind of combine those three in some way. And Jeremy, you say the heuristic, it's like, that's the easy way out. I think that sometimes we go there as mediators and processes like this, like, well, let's have an agreement, let's have action steps. But when we think this way, they're bound to kind of go back into that cyclical nature of conflict, right? If it's just a temporary fix. Yeah.
Well, it's almost like the approach of conflict resolution versus conflict transformation. It's like looking at the quick fix rather than like, hey, we need to take some time and sort of transform how you all interact with each other.
Did it, I'm sorry, I'm so focused on the definitions. Did this study talk about like which dialogue orientations are best fit for certain meeting types?
Yeah, so they talked about how, I'll read this over. The meeting type did affect which dialogue orientations were used, essentially. So it's not like which is best necessarily, it's just what's used, what is used more often in different meending types.
Interesting. I'm interested to see like so this study is kind of showing where leaders or where supervisors tended to lean towards, like which style. Mm-hmm. I'm curious to see which one is most effective.
Yeah, like so one, maybe effective is one variable to look at, and then which in terms of meeting satisfaction would be interesting too, to see an interaction between those three variables. Which ones were used in which, when you use different types of dialogue orientations and different types of meetings, which dialogue orientation leads to most satisfaction in which type of meeting, like those three interacting in some way. But you probably need a larger sample to do something.
Yeah.
One of the things that I guess you could maybe pinpoint something off of this, but they did notice that, so one of the things was negotiation, dialogue orientation, along with a couple others, were used in decision-making and problem-solving meetings, which are focused on resolving difficulties and participating in decision-making. And so they were more used in that than something like a feed-forward meeting, which is focused on sharing information about issues. And in the results, negotiation, dialogue orientation positively predicted employee satisfaction with the meeting process. So it makes me think of like maybe when employees feel like they're involved in the decision-making process, when they feel like they're a part of the table, that they are more satisfied with how the meeting's going and how the outcome is because they participated. And it's kind of like when you're a mediator or a peace builder, when you get one of the parties to help you make a decision on how we're going to settle or how we're going to work towards a solution. If they're part of building that solution, they're more likely to like it and they're more likely to hold to it when the solution is actually being implemented.
Absolutely. Self-determination, right? I mean, that's our goal, is having parties do the process. We're just facilitating it, not necessarily
sort of
giving them the answers.
like the core philosophy of mediation, right, is like helping others get to their own solutions.
Yeah, self-determination.
Yeah, self-determination. It's autonomy, and it's self-determination through those three basic needs: autonomy, relatedness, and competence. But the autonomy piece certainly is, I think, a key piece of our work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess. Oh, sorry.
Terrell just commented. I said to have orientations plotted on a chart with an axis urgent versus and important. Yeah, that'd be interesting to see to see some sort of matrix or plot graph of some sort.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking of this also, just this concept of the information seeking dialogue and negotiation dialogue, people being more satisfied, even outside of conflict, just, work meetings in general. We talk about the culture of inclusion, right? So if it kind of goes along with this, obviously, if a workplace culture is more inclusive, everyone is going to have a voice. People are involved in the meetings, at least, everyone's kind of adhered to, and that kind of validates that claim of inclusion.
Yeah.
I wonder if there was anyone that was any one of these, and maybe it was the information seeking. This is the goal of sharing information. Was that also like of learning information, like hearing information? Is that more like the goal of both sharing and hearing, or was it kind of?
Let me see. Let's study here.
Just curious as like which one was listening oriented, essentially.
Yeah, so the information-seeking dialogue occurs when a situation involves the unsatisfactory spread of information. That is, one party has more information than the other, and the goal is to find out this information. So like it says, there's also, it looks like maybe I missed one on here, but there's a information-giving dialogue, which captures in which the person has more information than the others, so he or she seeks to share information. So it seems like I don't know whether it's one side or the other. I don't know if it's just all-encompassing or whether, but they give an example of an information session about a program or a news conference held to disseminate updates exemplifies this dialogue.
Yeah, like Sarah said, I think they're probably all incorporating some form of active listening, except maybe for the persuasive dialogue. If you're just going in there to persuade someone else of your position.
Right. Right.
I'm just thinking of a super practical application to leave with clients who are doing trainings. A sort of language where it's, I want to have this kind of meeting, because a lot of people, they don't understand how to have meetings, set up meetings, but really say, I want to have this kind of meeting for this kind of outcome. So being able to say, I want to focus on sharing information about this issue so that we can reach a temporary accommodation. I could really see this as a plug and play kind of idea as far as for clients who are having lots of trouble around purposeless or unproductive meetings, really giving them this as a tool, just 2 columns of, I want to do this in the meeting to have this outcome.
Yeah, like, so it's like, what's the intended outcome of the meeting? And then what's the best practices? What's the best type of dialogue orientation for that meeting? And then
Yeah.
some tips. Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be very useful.
condense it down to some really simple words. I want to have this to do this kind of deal.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That'd be a very good idea, actually.